Hello and welcome to Educated STEM. I'm Kate, the founder of Educated STEM, and today we're going to be talking about how you will choose between 2 graduate schools or more if you have multiple offers. So first of all, congratulations! Having multiple offers from graduate schools is a wonderful position to be in. But now you need to figure out which one you're going to accept. Now, I'm a biochemist, so I like to look at a lot of data whilst making decisions. So what I have done is I have made a table which you can download at my Patreon page, at Educated STEM's Patreon page, and you can complete this putting in all of the information for your different offers, and then you can kind of compare and contrast and then decide which offer is going to be the best for you and therefore which program you are going to accept. So on this I've got 3 different columns for 3 different schools, but obviously if you have multiple offers which are more than 3, then just keep adding onto the table and it will just keep going. So the first thing on this table is the potential mentors of the program. So who would you like to work with and how many of those individuals are available? And so I don't want you to put in a number and just say, oh, you know, graduate school 1, there's 3 people I could potentially work for. I want you to put in the names and I want you to think about, you know, who they are, what level of funding they have, you know, did you meet them at the interview? Did you like them? Did you feel that you had a good rapport? All of those things I want you to consider when you put these names down. If you didn't meet them, then obviously still put the names in. They are still very valid candidates for you. But I want you to know that when you look at the schools, you should have multiple people that you could potentially work for. I don't want you to only have your eggs in one basket and say, you know, I really, really want to work for Professor X. They really are the only person I want to do my graduate studies with, because what happens if Professor X isn't taking students this year? You know, you're going to end up going to a program and there may not be anyone else there that you want to work with. So let's make sure that there are multiple people, ideally 3 or 4, that you could see yourself successfully working with over the next, 5 years for a PhD or more in America, 2-3 years if you're doing a master's. So pop the names in. Let's make sure that you have, you know, the correct thought process when you're looking at these programs. So that's going to be a key thing for you. Who would you work with? Now, different graduate programs may pay different stipends. So let's just put a dollar amount in. Exactly how much are they going to pay you? Now let's think, is that stipend going to be sufficient for where the program is? So obviously a stipend in New York, San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles, that's not going to stretch as far as somewhere, you know, probably in the middle of America. So even if it's a large city, they're probably not going to be as expensive as some of the cities that I've already named. Another thought, how often is the stipend increased? You know, does it happen, every blue moon or once in a blue moon, or does it happen every few years? Because that is something to know. Inflation goes up, you know, your expenses are going to go up. If your stipend is not going to be increased whilst you're there, that is definitely something to consider. How are students funded and for how long is it guaranteed? So is it going to be a fellowship? Is it going to have a grant? Are you going to be on someone else's grant, so a PI's grant? So if it's a PI's grant, obviously the grant is tied to your mentor. And, how long is that going to be around? Are they going to have to renew it? At which point is your funding guaranteed? These are things to consider because wondering where your money is going to come from is going to be an additional stress to you, which you probably don't want as a graduate student. It's going to be quite stressful already. So let's reduce all of the things that we can think of to reduce the stress, to make sure the whole process is as seamless as possible. Now, lots of programs don't offer this, but you may be very lucky. You may have been offered relocation expenses. So again, if you have been, pop that in. Usually you will have to pay upfront and then you will get the payment reimbursed. So just know that ahead of time. They're probably not going to be paying for things as soon as you get there. Now, some programs offer signing bonuses. Now, usually this is for someone either that is a really competitive top candidate that they really, really want in their program, or it's for someone who's an underrepresented minority in the field of the program. So again, not every school offers this, but some might. So have you been offered a signing bonus at any of the programs that you have received offers from? Have they offered you a fellowship? If you are one of those top candidates, to kind of lure you in, they may have offered you a named fellowship for your first 1, 2, 3, however many years. That is prestigious. That is going to definitely, make you stand out from other candidates moving forward. So, are you fortunate enough to have received an offer of a fellowship? If you have, pop that in the table. The next thing, is really focused on American benefits. If you go to other countries, you don't have to worry about a number of these things. But if you're in America, are they offering you healthcare benefits, dental, eye care? Is mental health coverage already included in your healthcare? Hopefully it is. If you have special requirements, so if you are trans, do they have providers and resources, especially if you're considering transitioning, or if you're already in the process of transitioning? You have to think about whether it's a supportive environment. Do they have lots of allies for you? Do the administrators have their pronouns, or the professors have their pronouns listed? And can you use preferred names on documents? So those are a couple of things to consider if you are trans. Do they have life insurance or disability insurance that they're going to offer you? And unlikely that they're going to have a pension or a 401k or a 401(3)(b), I think that's the number, but they might do. So if they do, that's a wonderful thing. You obviously want to start saving for retirement as soon as possible. You're probably thinking, crumbs, Kate, I'm really young. Retirement, isn't going to be for another 40 years. But think about it. The sooner you put money into a retirement account, the sooner it can start earning interest and compounding. And $100 put in now might actually become an awful lot more money than if you start saving in 10, 20 years time, and you have to put in an awful lot more money to try and even get the same amount. The next thing, how is the tuition paid? So if you're a master's student, then you might actually have to be paying for your tuition. But I think that if you're a PhD student, an awful lot of the time the tuition is somewhere in your offer. So let's just make sure are you going to have to pay for that, or is it going to be covered? What's the average time to graduation? So obviously if it's a master's program, you're probably looking at 2 years. But there is a large range if you're a PhD student. I think the national average is about 5.5 years, at least in the biological sciences. But, what is your program, or the potential programs that you're thinking, what is their time? Because their average could be, 6.5, 7 years. Do you really want to be there for that long, making a minimal stipend? I always think, when I'm advising students, you want to get in, you want to get your degree, you want to leave and go on to the next step in your career where you can certainly earn an awful lot more money. So if you're going to go to a program who does have a longer average time to graduation, what is your rationale behind that? I'm really hoping that there is an amazing mentor there that you really want to work with in order to be there for that long. Otherwise, I'm a little concerned about why you would go to a program who is known to take an awful lot longer to graduate. Another question, what are the percentage students who graduate? So this might be available on the school's website. I would definitely look it up. How many students in a PhD program leave with a master's? So they haven't finished the program and they have kind of left before that point. Some may not have even received a master's if they haven't got far enough in the process, but that is definitely something that you want to look at. How successful is the program at getting people through to graduation? Again, if you're looking at bad statistics, why do you want to go to that program? I want to make sure that you go to a program that is going to look after you, care for you, and try and make sure that you cross that final finishing line and graduate with the degree that you would like. What's the size of the program? So hopefully you considered this when you're applying. You know, some people want to kind of be in the background in an awfully large program, and some people want the individualized attention for a very small program. So again, how many people are going to be accepted? How many people are there throughout all of the years of the program? And is that a size that you are comfortable with? What are the responsibilities going to be, especially if your stipend is going to come out because you have hoops to jump through, or if your tuition is tied to certain requirements? So do you need to be a teaching assistant? And if the answer is yes, how many hours is that going to take? And each of these requirements may be different across all of the schools. So again, let's look at what you need to do in order to stay within the program. The next thing is a key thing for me. So what are the professional development opportunities that the programs provide? So do they provide seminars, internship opportunities? Do they bring in people to talk about different careers that you might get once you have your degree, and whether that's in academia or not? Do they have alumni events where they bring people back who have successfully completed the program? That could be a wonderful way for you to network yourself into your next position. Do they have grant writing workshops, which is a very key thing if you want to climb the ivory tower and move into academia? But it's also very important if you want to go into a number of other jobs. Being able to write really well, clearly, concisely is going to be a key thing. So are they going to teach you that? The next thing is, is this program supportive of your specific needs? So whatever your specific needs are, and obviously you know what those are. So for instance, if you are a person with a disability, do they provide accommodations which will allow you to participate fully in the program? For example, do they give closed captions for any recorded content? And another thing to think of is, do they have previous success with a similar student? Someone who has the same sort of background as you might be something to consider. A lot of people are first generation students. I definitely didn't know all of the different nuances when I came into my program. I learned an awful lot more nuances as an associate dean than I did even as a postdoc. So are there mentorship programs for first generation students to kind of help you navigate the experience? The next thing, what facilities do you have access to as a graduate student? So obviously the library had better be a key one, but also, are they going to allow you access to the career centre? I've heard sometimes that people may or may not be allowed to once you are a graduate student. Hopefully the answer is yes. There is a wonderful group of individuals who are the Graduate Career Consortium. And so I know that a number of schools across America and Canada, they do allow graduate students to access their career centre. So that shouldn't be an issue for you. But just to make sure that you do have that access, because you're not going to be in school forever. You will want to turn that degree into a job, whether that is in academia or not. Another thing, do they have gyms? Do they have clubs? Those sorts of things. What is it going to help you feel comfortable in this program? Something you may not have considered. Are you allowed to go to conferences during your graduate studies? And if you are, who pays? Can you apply for funding from either the graduate program or from your mentor, so that you can actually attend and begin building your network successfully so that you can then transition? Now, let's think about some key things about where the school is. So Do you like the location where the school is? Do they offer housing? And if they do offer housing, what is the cost? Are the utilities included? How long is the housing guaranteed? It's often only for the first year, and then after that you need to find somewhere local in order to stay. Do they have housing for someone who has a partner or children? A lot of places don't, so that is definitely something to consider. And also, if you have a pet, they may not be able to accommodate housing with pets either. So this is definitely something to consider. If you can't go into housing provided by the school, which is usually subsidized and is therefore cheaper, that is definitely going to impact your financial kind of stability when it comes to spending that stipend. Another thing to consider is transportation costs. So I bet you haven't considered, do you have to pay to park on campus? So depending on where you're going, a lot of the time if you go to a large school, you're going to have to actually pay in order to park your car there. So let's put that in to your consideration. Are any of could you change that? Could you charge some of that car parking to the program? Doubtful, but you may be able to. If you're going to be driving to campus, how long is that commute, and do you really want to do that? And remember, the length of a commute in somewhere like Los Angeles is going to be very different than somewhere else. So, even though it looks, 10 miles in LA, that could take much longer than you expect, especially in rush hour. So let's think about the commute, how long it's going to take, and do you really want to do that? If you're doing an experiment, to late in the evening, which you may well be doing, do you then want to tack on a long commute at the end of your day? If you have children, do they have daycare facilities, and is that subsidized? Now, the last few questions I really want you to consider. So when you went to your interview, did you feel represented whilst you're on campus? So especially for people of colour or those in the LGBTQ plus community, did you feel that you were represented? Could you see people who reflected you? Did you feel comfortable? Did you feel welcome on campus? Again, this kind of ties into the last question. If you didn't see people who kind of resembled you, you may not have felt as welcome as possible. Did you like the campus culture? So if you're going to somewhere possibly very prestigious, it might be very, very competitive. And, if you enjoy that, if that's something that's going to, kind of help inspire you to push and, do things faster and better, then great. But if you do not really want to be in a competitive environment, let's make sure that you go somewhere where, that isn't necessarily going to be a hurdle. And a couple of the last things I want you to consider. Did you like the graduate school administrators? These guys, these people are going to have an awful lot or you'll be interacting with them an awful lot during your time in school. So if you got a bad vibe from them, if you really didn't get along with them, then that might be something to consider, because guaranteed you're going to want to talk to them, ask them questions about the program, even if it's something as simple as getting something reimbursed, or a question about grading, or a class that you have to take. You're going to have to interact with these individuals. So do you like them? Did you feel safe on campus? This is a key thing. I've definitely been to campuses before where I did not feel safe. And ironically enough, I went to, this is now in the UK, but when I interviewed for my undergraduate degree, I went to a school and it was very daunting. It was a very metropolitan area. I was brought up in the countryside, so it was like a little country mouse looking at the big city, and I found it very daunting. I decided that I didn't want to go to that school. I ended up doing a postdoc there and loved it, but that was a number of years later, after I traveled internationally and I'd lived in America for a year. And by that point, I felt ready to live there. but think about the campus. Are you ready for that? Maybe you're from the country and you want to live in a big city, and that's something that you're excited about, but think about that before you accept. And finally, how did you feel after the interview process? So hopefully you felt energized and you liked the people that you met and you had a really good feeling, this is the place that I really want to come to. If you have any negative feelings about the programs and you just kind of have a gut instinct, I would listen to that. Even if it's somewhere amazing that you really want to go, if your gut's just kind of roiling and you feel unsettled, that's definitely something that you want to consider before you accept. Now, because you have multiple offers, as soon as you decide this is not a school for me, I would like you to reach out to the administrator and let them know. And the reason is because they're going to have a wait list of students who are anxiously waiting to be accepted. So the sooner you can let the school know that you will not be accepting, the faster someone else can get that offer. And so be a little altruistic about this. You don't want to go there. Let someone else get the offer as soon as possible so they can also consider. So the template that I've just been working through with all of the different questions about the graduate program is going to be available at Educated STEM on Patreon. So please go ahead and download this document and just plug in your information so that you can look at the data before you make this decision. There is also going to be a budget template available. And so I would encourage you to also complete a budget template to make sure that you can actually afford to survive on the stipend that they're offering. And if you can't afford it, know that you're going to have to go into a little bit of debt, maybe a lot of debt, before the end of the program, but you know that going in. So I would encourage you to also go and download the budget template. So thank you for joining me today. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow Educated STEM on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And please don't hesitate to put comments below. Happy to give advice about different questions that you might have regarding choosing your graduate school. So I hope that helps. Choosing your program is a big decision, and so let's not make this about silly little things that you might regret. Let's get it all down on paper so you can look at the data. So thank you. Good luck choosing your school.